Employees last Friday, Google Cloud CEO Diana Green announced that Google will not seek another contract with the U.S. Department of Defense, or DoD, in Project Maven. The project, also known as the Algorithmic Warfare Cross-Functional Team, was launched in April last year to develop and integrate computer vision algorithms needed to help military and civilian analysts in counterinsurgency operations. The current contract between Google and the Pentagon expires in 2019 and involves controversial work providing AI for analyzing drone footage. The decision came after over 3,000 Google employees signed a petition in protest saying Google should not be in the business of war. The Pentagon has reportedly made AI the centerpiece of its weapons strategy. Funding for the Maven project almost doubled to reach $130 million in the federal budget signed in March by U.S. President Donald Trump. So what's the difference between the use of big data and machine learning in military application from technological advancements in the past? Is Google's decision a short-term reaction to employee protests and adverse publicity, or part of a sweeping strategy among tech companies not to pursue military work? And how much of a setback, if any, would the deal have on Pentagon's AI programs? I'm pleased to be joined by two guests, one from Oxford, in the Oxford University in the UK, Professor Nick Bostrom, who is the director of the program on the impacts of future technology at Oxford Martin School. In Beijing, we have Mr. Li Dawei, CEO and founder of the China Thinkers Bureau. Gentlemen, it's great to have both of you on the show. Dr. Bostrom, let me go to you first. Explain to us, first of all, what is the difference between the application of AI technology and machine learning in military warfare compared to past technological advancements? What is the difference? Why AI is attracting so much controversy here?
I think it's a somewhat fuzzy boundary. To some extent, it's a different research community that is driving the cutting edge with machine learning than was the case with big data. So there are just some differences in culture between these two different research communities. Also, I think with artificial intelligence, there is what we have today, but there is also this immense vision of what AI might become over the coming years and decades. There is this sense that ultimately this will be a very important and transformative technology, more so maybe than with big data. And I think that also encourages people to think harder about the longer term consequences of the actions they take.
Right. Mr. Li, we all talk about, for instance, IBM interballistic missiles, guided missiles. Basically there, the missile is also kind of autonomous, right? It finds its own target. What is the difference then? When that technology is being used for the first time, were people talking about banning such, not letting weapon having its own smartness?
Okay, thank you, Nick. So first of all, I think no war is good war. No weapons are good weapons. So people have been using advanced technology to improve the quality and the quantity of the weapons for many years, for 100 years. But there indeed a distinguished difference between the AI-driven weaponization with the past technology development. So firstly, AI development, some advanced countries like the United States or the OECD countries has larger advancement compared with some developing countries and some ideologically different nations. Secondly, AI would be driven by the capital, the best scientists and the best entrepreneurs. For example, the Silicon Valley would help United States to improve their AI in a degree which is exponentially greater than many other competing nations. So that would make a totally difference.
Professor Bostrom, let me come to you again. Let's just look at the logic of the U.S. Defense Department. They're basically trying to use unmanned drones to detect terrorist targets at a lower cost and at a lower risk without invoking great casualty. From this perspective, don't you think AI technology has the potential, has the advantage to improve the efficiency of these strikes without causing as much casualties? Why should they? Is it a right strategy that they're pursuing there?
I mean, I could certainly see why, if you are a big military, you would want to invest in AI. And I think there are many applications, not just to lethal autonomous weapons, but in the background. If you have a big military logistics center, let us say, then for the same reasons that Amazon wants AI to predict demand curves, so could you benefit from that if you're a big military organization? Nevertheless, I think there is a strong sense among many of the leading machine learning researchers that they don't really want to be a part of that, of the militarization of AI. And ultimately some other company or some other maybe second tier or third tier researchers will step in and fill that void. But what it does mean is that the leading edge of artificial intelligence might be developed in the civilian sector rather than in the military sector. And that might be positive as we think about these scenarios of how AI might transform the world in the future.
Well, you have been very strong about the fact or the hypothesis that by developing AI, we human beings are basically digging our own graves. The biggest enemy of ourselves is the superintelligence that we're building. So do you think that in applying AI to weapons, to unmanned drones, we're moving further on that path?
Well, I mean, I would say that I also think there's this enormous upside of machine intelligence, provided we do it right and are careful and work out, scalable control methods, etc. I think the potential is there for a hugely beneficial impact as well. I think, though, that there are two separate concerns, really, with very advanced AI. So one is how we could ensure that the AI itself is aligned with human values and intentions. So that's ultimately a technical problem that research is now going on. But then there's a second problem, which is to make sure that we humans, if we can control the AI, then don't misuse it, that we don't use it to wage war or cause destruction or oppress people. And that ultimately is a political problem rather than a technical problem. And I think on the margin, seeing AI being applied more for military purposes is kind of makes a solution to that political problem maybe slightly less probable. But I don't think it necessarily increases the risk of the first problem, that we would lose control of the AI.
Mr. Lee, what is your take on the kind of danger of further application of AI in weaponries?
My point of view is a human being has been developing one technology after another technology. Very good metaphor is like 60 years ago, we have the first weaponized nuclear weapons at the end of the Second World War. During that time, if you research the media and the newspapers, people is afraid of the Armageddon is coming, the end of human society is coming. But in fact, after 60 or 70 years of progress, although we have many nuclear bombs all across the world, but human society benefits much hugely from the nuclear powers, and the benefit is brought to us. We have best clean energy. We have a shipcraft could ship forever using the nuclear reactors. And only yesterday, we have a better deal from the South Korea leaders and President Trump declaring the ending of the war in Korea. So we have better grasp and control of the nuclear power. So we do not have to be so negative. We should be more optimistic to AI and other emerging new technologies.
Professor Bostrom, do you agree with what Mr. Lee's opinions here?
Well, I think with regard to nuclear weapons, there is an element of luck. If you look at the historical research that is coming out now that some of these archives of classified materials are being opened up from the Cold War, it's striking how close the world seems to have come on several occasions to a nuclear conflagration between the US and the Soviet Union. There were some really close calls. So I don't think we should draw too strong a lessons from the fact that we managed to survive this dangerous period. In any case, I do think the world should embrace AI and that it has this enormous potential for benefiting society. But as with any powerful technology, there is also the risk of misuse. And the more we can discourage that, I think the brighter the prospect.
What kind of impact will the improved or more greater use of AI technologies in weaponry have on international politics, Mr. Li?
So if any nation or nations have the advancement of AI technology, would become a term I mentioned called AI hegemony. So meaning one nation has the AI, all the AI weaponization, best weapons. So all the traditional global political orders will be broken. All the trade policies and the current world orders will be changed. So that won't be the best scenario of our future. So if that happens, in the end, so what's the best food in the world? Probably McDonald's, because that country, that president would have the best AI weapons.
Early April, in Geneva, representatives of 120 UN member countries had this discussion of a potential ban on lethal AI-infused weaponry. Professor Bostrom, what do you think of the timing of such a ban? Do you think the timing is right to have such a ban yet?
Well, if it is going to be banned, I think now would be the right time, because once it's more widely deployed, it's going to be harder to roll it back. I can see arguments on both sides. On the one hand, it does seem desirable to prevent another arms race and the rush to weaponize AI technology. If the world can refrain from doing that, that seems preferable. On the other hand, I think it's quite hard to draw the boundary around exactly what is the thing you want to forbid. Mm-hmm. If you say any decision to take a life should be made by a human, well, if what that demands to in practice is that there is somebody sitting in a big office building in Virginia, some 19-year-old whose job it is, whenever a box appears on the screen, fire now, they have to press a red button. If that's what it means to have a human in the loop, it's not clear how much more accountability that introduces than having the robot make the decision itself. Also, if it can increase the precision with which military strikes are conducted, maybe it could reduce collateral damage. And if there are going to be wars, better there are no wars, but if there are going to be wars, perhaps you prefer their wars be robots killing robots rather than humans killing humans. So I think it would be better if we could find some way to prevent this kind of arms race with the treaty. But I haven't actively involved myself with that particular campaign for these reasons that I mentioned.
Thank you very much. We have to leave it there. Professor Nick Bostrom, who is the director of the program on the impacts of future technology at Oxford Martin School, and Li Dawei, CEO and founder of the China Thinkers Bureau. And that is it for this edition of The Point with me, Liu Xin. As always, you can follow me on Facebook and Twitter using the handle The Point with LX. Download the application called Cgtn to watch the show on your mobile devices, or go to